First peaceful transition in Afghanistan's history, Saturday's first round of the presidential election signaling the end of a 12-year tenure for Hamid Karzai. The list of challenges is long, longer you might say than the list of challengers, starting with the violence fomented by the Taliban who have vowed to disrupt Saturday's first round of voting. One of the main contenders, he finished fourth in 2009, Ashraf GHANI, former finance minister. His supporters bill him as a staunch reformer. Thank you for joining us from the capital, Kabul, here on France 24. Would you say, when you look with two-thirds of the country getting voting cards, with the violence that we've talked about, are the conditions there for a free and fair election? And how does it compare to 2009?
Yeah, disconnect the heater.
We appear to have technical issues joining Kabul. We'll go to Kabul as quickly as we can. Right now, we're instead going to go to Montpelier, Vermont, where we're joined by the UN Deputy Special Representative at the time, a while back for Afghanistan. Peter GALBRAITH is now at the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation. Thank you for being with us here on France 24. And I guess the question I'll put to you straight is, first of all, how does this poll compare to 2009?
Well, we of course have to see what happens, but the conditions that made for massive fraud in 2009 are still present. And some of the things that might have restrained the fraud in 2009, or at least allowed the international community to learn about it, no longer exist. So what happened in 2009 is that Hamid Karzai, who of course was a candidate for re-election, appointed all the members of the Independent Election Commission, as well as the people who are actually running the election. And so, of course, they were in a position to either organize, facilitate, or look the other way as this massive fraud took place. About a third of the votes Karzai got were fraudulent. But in 2009, there was an independent body, the Electoral Complaints Commission, with 3 of its 5 members appointed by the UN. Now, for this election, Karzai has again appointed all the members of the Independent Election Commission and of the Electoral Complaints Commission. So there isn't this independently appointed body to check on or to correct or look at the fraud. The second problem is that there are many fewer observers because of the security situation and because the international community has essentially become discouraged by what has happened in Afghanistan. So there'll be fewer people looking at the elections. The UN has a lesser role. Frankly, Karzai's bitter complaints against the United States and the United Nations intimidated the Obama administration, and so they began to cut back on things that might have better ensured a fair election. For example, they stopped polling, and polling is very important when you have in these kinds of circumstances, because if the final results deviate sharply from the pre-election polls, well, that's a pretty good indication that something is wrong, and if they're close, then people could have reasonable confidence that things are going well. And the final thing that took place in 2009 is that there were about 1,200 ghost polling centers. That is to say, polling centers that were located on a map, but didn't actually exist in reality. They weren't physically on the ground. And those were places that then the Election Commission could report results, fraudulent results, without the inconvenience of having election officials, candidate agents, international observers, or even voters go there, because the polling places didn't physically exist. And in this election as well, there are ghost polling centers, or at least the potential for it.
Peter GALBRAITH, stay with us, because we're going to try to link up once again with Kabul and presidential candidate Ashraf GHANI. He's a former finance minister, ran in that 2009 election. Ashraf GHANI, listening there to Peter GALBRAITH, what's your assessment? Will it be a free and fair election, and how does it compare to 2009?
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you. There points of comparison that are negative, as Mr. Galbraith has brought forward. There are points of comparison that are positive. First, in 2009, there was not an engaged citizenry or an intensive campaign throughout the country or a massive debate on television or the presence of the new social media or the immense engagement of youth. These are factors that need to be taken into account. Today, there's no silent majority in Afghanistan. The citizenry is extremely engaged. The formation of voluntary associations has been massive. The weighing of the candidates, their platforms, is taken place very carefully by the public. I do not think that the Afghan public would tolerate a level of fraud anywhere close to 2009.
But to the point that was made by Mr. Galbraith, that the Electoral Commission this time around, handpicked by Hamid Karzai?
Well, the UN did not absolve itself very well. Mr. Galbraith himself resigned, so the presence of the UN is no guarantee of the independence.
No.
I asked Mr. Galbraith as to the scandal that involved the UN. The members of the commission have been appointed by the president, no doubt, but there was a process where the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the head of the Human Rights Commission, the head of the Constitutional Commission reviewed people. Afghanistan, since Mr. Galbraith has lifted, is a very different political country. And we need to understand this new context. The risk of fraud is there, but I think were fraud to be committed, the public reaction would be so massive that it would isolate those who engage in fraud. So we should focus. Number of ghost stations has been radically reduced. The number of stations that have actually been closed is quite impressive. And we need to make sure that all the candidates work together to avoid fraud. And because there's no sitting president running, again, the incentives of the bureaucracy are likely to be different because they need to watch for their future. And there's no guarantee that fraud would produce the results.
All right, Ashraf GHANI, your candidacy, it's not so much your platform that's drawn criticism, but rather your running mate, the fact that you have on your ticket Abdul Rashid Dostum, a warlord who is accused of war crimes by many.
Well, first of all, General Dostum ran in 2004, got around 800,000 votes. He's a charismatic leader. Second, France, Germany, after World War II, how long did it take you to deal with your past? We need to resolve the differences that have divided this country. This is a platform of national unity, and we have brought together a centrist alliance that is rare in Afghanistan. General Dostum is the only person out of that era that is openly addressed the conflict and its consequences and apologized to the public. He's not been matched by anyone else. What about other tickets? They've got people with backgrounds from the same period. We need to arrive at an Afghan path of truth and reconciliation because it's only South Africa and Rwanda that have taken those kinds of steps. And we will address the question of transitional justice, but it needs to be in the context of our urgent need for peace, stability, and prosperity.
Very, very briefly, Ashraf GHANI, what's your prediction now for the first round? How will it go?
The likelihood of public participation, particularly after the last debate on the economy that the two major other candidates, Dr. Abdullah and Dr. Rasul, declined to participate in, has been a very positive factor for our ticket that has made the undecided shift towards us. So the possibility of a real win for us in the first round is there, and we hope that would be realized.
A first-round win, perhaps, you're saying. Peter Galbraith, what's your prediction going forth?
Well, first, I'm encouraged by what my friend Ashraf GHANI has said about civic participation. And certainly, I think everybody hopes there'll be a large turnout and great vigilance on the part of the peoples of Afghanistan about the elections. I think it's likely that the elections will go to a second round, and that the question will be which of the three candidates, Abdullah, Ashraf GHANI, or Zalmay Rasool, will be the two that will go into the second round. Each of them have strengths. If I were to make a prediction, I would think that probably Abdullah would be one of those candidates because he has a strong base in the northern part of the country among the Tajik and Hazara communities. And it would be perhaps a contest between Ashraf GHANI and Zalmay Rasool as to who the other one is. I think if they're genuinely fair elections, I think Ashraf GHANI has a very excellent chance of being in the final round and of winning. If there's a lot of fraud, I think the view is that Karzai, who wants to have a continuing role in Afghanistan as the father of the nation, he's building a palace right next to the one he now occupies, and the view is that he thinks he'll better have that role if Zalmay Rasool wins. And so I'm not so optimistic that he's going to keep his hands off of this election.
All right, Ambassador Galbraith, many thanks for joining us from Vermont. Many thanks to Ashraf GHANI, presidential candidate, for being with us from Kabul. Good luck to you in Saturday's vote. You're watching France 24. Much more to come here. We'll have more on the Afghan elections and a look at commemorations of the 20th anniversary of the genocide in Rwanda. Stay with us.